Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make a serged scrunchie, and with this project we're going to learn we're going to do a few different skills. We're going to sew a standard seam, we're going to make a casing, and we're going to use the serger. So I'm starting out by using the handle strap stencil that we had used for our bags. This is, let's see, 26.5 inches long by 3.5 inches wide. You do not have to cut your scrunchie that big or that small. You can really play around with the sizing, but this is what I'm going to use. It's pretty close to all of the other scrunchie patterns I've seen as far as dimensions go. And you'll notice I have 2 layers of fabric. You only need 1. I am simply cutting through 2. You'll be doing this with your table team helping you out, so you can cut 2 and give 1 to your partner. So after you have cut your scrunchie pieces, you're going to actually fold it in half. Make sure it's even, and you're going to pin it in place. So I'm going to put a pin so that it doesn't move, and then a pin over here. Do one more. And then I'm actually going to slice the scrunchie in half lengthwise. So I'm turning my shears sideways, and I'm going to make sure it stays even as I cut it in half. Now, this fabric doesn't really have a right or wrong side, but you do want to have your right sides together. I'm going to put a few more pins in place, and then I'm ready to begin sewing. Okay, so now I'm going to take my scrunchie fabric and sew a 5/8 inch standard seam, so right lined up with the tape. Lower my needle, got my pin, and you're just going to sew right along at 5/8 inch. My edges are a little frayed on the edge, so I'm trying my best to keep it even. And I'm just going to continue this on both sides. So I'm doing it here, and then I'm going to do it on the other side as well. So now I'm going to use the serger, and if your serger, you get to it and it's not threaded, there is another video right there. There's also just a basic video on how to use the serger. Back here we have settings on how to make sure you're doing the right stitch. We want to do the 3 thread overlock wide, which is on the top left, and it's got pictures. And that means our stitch selector is on A. Our width, which is the smaller one because you're shorter, you're taller than you are wide. That's how I remember it. Taller than you are wide. It's at 7.5, and our length is down here. You can't quite see it, but it's at 2.5. So you can close this all up. Make sure your presser foot is down and chain off. Make sure your stitches are going nicely. And then I am going to serge with, this is the blade right here. This is my marker. So I'm going to line my stitch length, or my stitches that I just sewed, up with this groove right here. I think I'll do this groove. One of the 2 grooves. You can kind of decide your comfort level. But I want it to be serging. As long as I'm keeping it lined up right here, it's going to serge pretty close to where I just sewed. My presser foot stays down. And another good guideline for you is really, we're barely cutting anything off. This shelf right here is kind of lined up with the blade, so that's what's going to be trimmed. So I'm just keeping that in mind to help me go straight. And I'm taking my time. This thing goes really fast. We want to take our time as we serge along this seam allowance. When you're finished, a little different than sewing on the standard sewing machine, you chain off until your thread is way back here, then you trim close. So you can see I have this really nice serged edge, and it is in blue, which matches my fabric. That's important for this. I'm going to continue and do the other side now. Okay, when you are done, trim up all your threads and make sure to throw all your scrap fabric. I have a pile in the wastebasket. And then we're going to go on to the next step. So here's my serged beginning of a scrunchie. And now let's go put some elastic in. So now I have my narrow elastic. And since this is a hair scrunchie, or like for your wrist, we're going to cut your elastic to be about the width of your wrist. You can always adjust it slightly. You can make it smaller, not bigger. So I'm going to take my safety pin and insert it into the elastic. And then I'm going to begin scrunching it through. So pushing that elastic and that safety pin through until the elastic is flush with the end, which is almost there. One frustration with these safety pins is sometimes they come open. So try to keep it closed and not actually squeeze it. Now I can feel my elastic, it snuck away on me, but it's still right here. So I'm going to put a straight pin through it to make sure I don't lose the elastic, and just pull it through. And I'm going to keep scrunching until I get all the way through. Trying not to squeeze the actual safety pin, I'm just pushing the end of it. Okay, I'm through. So at this point, you're going to distribute your scrunchiness all around, kind of pull your elastic down, and then you've got kind of the outline of your scrunchie. So I have both my ends of elastic, and I now want to overlap them like this so that I can sew them secure. And if your elastic is too long, you can always trim it down. So when we sew this, it is a little tricky to lay it out. It's great to have a partner to help you lower that presser foot, but notice I went vertical like this because the elastic is so skinny. I'm also turning my width just to a 2, a little bit, so that I'm going to zigzag a bit to hold this elastic. So you'll see the needle is bouncing back and forth. I'm going to backstitch and sew as much as I can so this elastic stays together. Nobody likes it when their hair tie breaks. Okay, so I sewed that. I'm gonna just trim off this extra bit, and you can tell that I backstitched. I'm gonna trim up my thread. Okay, last step, you're going to take your scrunchie and turn one of the edges under as best as you can so that that cut edge or that raw edge is not showing. And then this other side, you're going to push into that edge. I actually had some luck using shears and just kind of tucking it in. You could use a pencil eraser With the shears, I'm pointing away from me and they're closed. I'm just using it as something to kind of get it in there. So now I have no raw edges showing, and then we're just going to do an edge stitch along here so that it's secured. I'm going to put my stitch width back to 0 and just going to back stitch and sew right through all of this. If it's thick, go slowly or even turn the hand wheel so you don't want to break the needle. And I'm being pretty secure on it. Again, my thread matches, so you shouldn't be able to see the stitching. I'll trim it up. Make sure all those threads are trimmed, and then there you have it. You have a serge scrunchie.